if a child picks up a book and likes it, that's not the end of it, you know. It's read at least 4, 5, and sometimes 15 times, and each time it's got to stand up to that.
So, in 2023, the writing world erupted over a censorship controversy. At the heart of this controversy was beloved children's book author Roald Dahl. You likely know Dahl as the author of works such as The BFG, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and several others. What you may not know is that Roald Dahl has been a pretty controversial figure for a long time. Even when setting his adult publications aside, it doesn't take a literary historian to see the controversy in his writing. Dahl has long been controversial for the racism and sexism apparent in his writing, among other things. These sentiments were somewhat more acceptable in Dahl's era, but knowing that doesn't change how wrong they were in Dahl's time or in the present. As such, Puffin Publishers hired sensitivity readers from Inclusive Minds to update current editions of Dahl's books. On the one hand, I understand the wish to protect kids from dangerous sentiments like racism. On the other hand, I think opting to censor the books is to deny the world that Dahl was living in and the experiences he had. Leaving the books untouched not only preserves their literary merit, but also turns them into teaching tools around potentially controversial subjects. Plus, censorship is a slippery slope. Inclusive Minds sensitivity readers went as far as removing the word ugly from some of Dahl's works. By removing every potentially objectionable word from Dahl's books, censors could water down what made the books special in the first place. While Roald Dahl might primarily be known for his novels, he was also quite a poet. He often injected poetry into his prose stories. As a lover of poetry and someone who hasn't touched Dahl's works since grade school, I thought it would be worth my time to look back at some of these words. Are they really worth all the fuss? Were the calls for censorship warranted even in Dahl's poems? Let's find out. The poetry from Roald Dahl that you're likely most familiar with is his collection called Revolting Rhymes, which features retellings of classic fairy tales. The book also features illustrations by Quentin Blake, a frequent collaborator of Dahl's. Blake's illustrations are so intertwined with Dahl's words, in fact, that I didn't even realize Roald Dahl wasn't the illustrator of his own stories. I seem to remember at least one of these retellings read to me by our elementary school's librarian. These poems are pretty lengthy, so I won't read them all in their entirety, but I'll do some summarizing and quote excerpts where necessary. The poem that opens the collection is Cinderella. The poem is written in iambic tetrameter, 4 sets of alternating unstressed and stressed syllables, sometimes with an unstressed 9th syllable at the end of each line. I guess you think you know this story, you don't, the real one's much more gory. This is the form that Dahl opts for almost always, which is fine, there's no harm in poets having preferred forms. As far as rhyme goes, the poem is made up of couplets, AA, BB, CC, and so on. Another trademark feature for Dahl's poetry is the rather gruesome content and gross imagery. For example, lines 11 through 14 recount, "Darling little Cinderella was locked up in a slimy cellar where rats who wanted things to eat began to nibble at her feet." As the collection's title suggests, it's a pretty revolting thought. There's also a moment where the story's prince refers to Cinderella as a dirty slut. However, keep in mind that Dahl was a British author who wrote decades ago. Sources suggest this word had a different meaning in Britain's past than it has now in America's present. The word meant slovenly or negligent of neatness. So, in case the language and imagery didn't tip you off, this telling of Cinderella deviates quite a bit from, say, Disney's version. When the fairy godmother comes to Cinderella's aid, the girl speaks to her savior in a rather entitled fashion. She said, "My dear, are you all right?" "All right," cried Cindy. "Can't you see I feel rotten as can be?" She beat her fist against the wall and shouted, "Get me to the ball." She goes on to demand a coach, earrings, a diamond brooch, and naturally her slippers. Later, after the prince recovers her lost slipper, one of the stepsisters swaps it for her shoe. Since the prince vowed to marry the person to whom the shoe belonged, he finds himself stuck with the insistent stepsister. So to avoid a marriage, he cuts off her head there in her home. Cinderella sees this, and we get the use of the word I mentioned earlier. The fairy godmother returns, and Cinderella tells her, "This time I shall be more wary. No more princes, no more money. I have had my taste of honey. I'm wishing for a decent man. They're hard to find. Do you think you can?" Within a minute, Cinderella was married to a lovely feller, a simple jam maker by trade, who sold good homemade marmalade. Their house was filled with smiles and laughter, and they were happy ever after. So there are multiple morals we can pull from the story. The obvious moral would appear to be careful what you wish for. However, I think the more subtle moral is that the rich and powerful abuse those below them. In the case of Cinderella, she's obviously abused and mistreated by her stepsisters. In their case, the prince beheads both of them and receives no repercussions. He's just allowed to do that sort of thing because he's the prince. And given the nature of dictators historically, that sort of adds up. This version of the story kind of says more about wealth and power than the tale that we're familiar with. And speaking of terrible, condemnable, wealthy people, there's Elon Musk, a man who I will bring up again later in this video. You probably know Elon Musk for a lot of unflattering reasons, but at least he's a proponent of electric cars, right? Well, that might not be great either, since according to headlines, electric cars are actually more likely to hit pedestrians. That might sound crazy, but luckily we can find out more about this story through today's sponsor, Ground News. You've likely heard of Ground News. It's a website and app that gathers news sources from around the world and across the political spectrum to help you cut through the bias of every story. You guys can check out Ground News at my link, ground.news/roughestdrafts. I honestly support Ground News' mission immensely, and I was super happy to have them reach out to me. As someone who loves to read and write, I recognize that bias is everywhere. Regarding this story about electric cars, we see that there are 34 different articles on the matter. According to Ground News' bias distribution, 44% of the sources covering this story are left-leaning, with 28% leaning right and another 28% in the center. Interestingly, in comparing headlines, they don't deviate all that much. But by using Ground News' bias comparison, we can see what each side of the political aisle chooses to emphasize in their coverage. For example, both the left and right emphasize the contrast in urban and rural risk of electric cars, while the center doesn't emphasize that point so much. Meanwhile, the left-leaning sources often include governmental regulation suggestions, with some center sources doing so as well. But the right proposes technology as a straightforward solution without governmental warning. Ground News is independently owned and not a news publisher. It aggregates news from a wide variety of sources and puts them all into one place. By comparing coverage on any given story, we learn to think critically about these events. You can go to ground.news/roughestdrafts right now to subscribe for 40% off unlimited access, which is what I use. You can use this QR code or the link in the description and pinned comment. Thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. In the next poem, Jack and the Beanstalk, we once again see two morals in action. In this poem, Jack's mother is devoured by the giant. Her smell attracts him because she never takes a bath. Jack then bathes and, as such, evades the giant, collecting gold leaves from the top of the beanstalk. The poem's ending couplet reads, "A bath, he said, does seem to pay. I'm going to have one every day." So the explicit message is clear: keep up with personal hygiene. The less obvious moral, however, would appear to be about parenthood. After Jack sells the family cow for one magic bean, his mother verbally and physically abuses him. Then, summoning up all her power, she beat the boy for half an hour, using, and nothing could be meaner, the handle of a vacuum cleaner. Then there's this interaction after Jack climbs the beanstalk for the first time. "I saw him, Mum, my gizzard froze, a giant with a clever nose." "A clever nose," his mother hissed. "You must be going round the twist." "He smelled me out, I swear it, Mum. He said he smelled an Englishman." The mother said, "And well he might. I've told you every single night to take a bath because you smell, but would you do it? Would you hell? You even make your mother shrink because of your unholy stink." Jack answered, "Well, if you're so clean, why don't you climb the crazy bean?" Then, to prove a point to Jack, she climbs the stalk and is subsequently eaten. As such, the poem's true message deals more with hypocrisy and parenthood. Parents should be role models for their kids, lest they show them exactly what not to do in life. Ideally, a parent shouldn't ask something from their child that they're unwilling to model themselves. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, we see more condemnations of those in power. Following the death of Snow White's mother, the king, quote, "wrote to every magazine and said, 'I'm looking for a queen.' At least 10,000 girls replied and begged to be the royal bride. The king said with a shifty smile, 'I'd like to give each one a trial.'" So the language here implies sex, and not just that, but with 10,000 different women. Much like the prince in Cinderella, the king's power goes unchecked here. As for other deviations, the dwarves are replaced by horse jockeys. When Snow White stumbles upon them, she becomes their unpaid laborer. She's partly unpaid because the jockeys lost all their money betting on horses. Snow White then steals the magic mirror from the castle and uses its omniscience to bet on the winning horse in each race. The poem ends by saying, "Thereafter, every single day, the mirror made the bookies pay. Each dwarf and Snow White got a share, and each was soon a millionaire." Which shows that gambling's not a sin, provided that you always win. In our previous poems, even if the moral was something as simple as take a bath, it was still a good message for kids to hear. This moral, however, feels far more questionable. And make no mistake, that's intentional. The unconventional moral just plays into the other subversions we see in these fairy tales. Dahl isn't truly encouraging anyone to gamble or cheat, but keep this deviation in mind going forward. After Goldilocks and the Three Bears, there's Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. This poem follows the standard course for the most part. There's something worth noting in lines 20 and 21 after the wolf has eaten Red's grandmother. He quickly put on Grandma's clothes. Of course, he hadn't eaten those. The implication then is that the wolf undressed Red's grandma, probably against her will. That reading lends itself well to the long-held interpretation that the wolf represents the idea of stranger danger. As an aside, this reminds me of one of my favorite retellings called Lon Popo, a children's book subtitled A Red Riding Hood Story from China. But back to the matter at hand. Red eventually makes it to her grandma's house where she notes, "But Grandma, what a lovely great big furry coat you have on," to which the wolf responds, "That's wrong. Have you forgot to tell me what big teeth I've got?" Here the poem deviates to such an extent that even the characters in the story note the difference. From there, Red pulls out a pistol, shoots the wolf 3 times, and turns him into a coat. This metatextuality carries us into the final piece, the 3 Little Pigs. In this version of the tale, when the wolf fails to blow down the brick house, he threatens to come back with dynamite. Thus the pig calls Red Riding Hood to come deal with the wolf. After she shoots the wolf and the pig celebrates, the narrator says, "Ah, Piglet, you must never trust young ladies from the upper crust. For now Miss Riding Hood, one notes, not only has 2 wolfskin coats, but when she goes from place to place, she has a pigskin traveling case." The characterization of Red as a lady from the upper crust is curious and potentially something else to keep in mind as we get into other poems, but for now let's leave it at this. The morals became fewer and further between with each story, lending to the subversive takes on each story. The book's objective, arguably, is not to teach in such an explicit manner. Instead, the book encourages kids to think differently about things that might be familiar to them. The poem format arguably makes the stories more engaging and lends to their status as fractured fairy tales. Rhyme would normally suggest a level of structure, maybe even propriety, but here there's only deconstruction and impropriety. Dahl's next poetry collection is Dirty Beasts. Published in 1983, just a year after Revolting rhymes, each poem here is dedicated to at least one animal. The collection's first poem, The Pig, is surprisingly philosophical, if you'll allow me to read some excerpts. He simply couldn't puzzle out what life was really all about. What was the reason for his birth? Why was he placed upon this earth? His giant brain went round and round, alas, no answer could be found, till suddenly one wondrous night, all in a flash, he saw the light. He jumped up like a ballet dancer, and yelled, "By gum, I've got the answer. They want my bacon by the slice, to sell at a tremendous price. The butcher's shop, the carving knife, that is the reason for my life." The poem invites us to put ourselves in the pig's shoes. Can you imagine if you received a concrete answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? And the answer was that you were simply made to be eaten, made to provide sustenance for someone else? The horrifying realization catapults us into a rather gruesome ending. How does the pig respond when confronted with this cruel, harsh reality? Next morning, in comes Farmer Bland, a pail of pig-will in his hand, and Piggy, with a mighty roar, bashes the farmer to the floor. Now comes the rather grisly bit, so let's not make too much of it, except that you must understand that Piggy did eat Farmer Bland. Slowly he scratched his brainy head, and with a little smile he said, "I had a fairly powerful hunch that he might have me for his lunch, and so because I feared the worst, I thought I'd better eat him first." So given the metaphysical nature of the pig's questions, one potential theme we might draw is take your destiny into your own hands. However, I once again can't help but derive an anti-capitalist meaning from this work. In a capitalist economy, it's either eat or be eaten. If the working masses don't rise up to eat the rich, they will be devoured themselves. It's no wonder that when this poem was posted on r/poetry, a lot of people drew Animal Farm comparisons. And this isn't even the only poem in the collection to which we could apply the whole eat the rich messaging. In the poem The Anteater, a spoiled boy from the USA demands the titular animal as a pet. The only anteater available for purchase is one who's heavily malnourished. It begs the rich boy for food, but the boy tells it to go find some ants. It's unable to find ants in the yard, so it remains starving. Later, the boy's aunt comes to visit, and the poem goes as follows. "Some people in the USA have trouble with the words they say. However hard they try, they can't pronounce a simple word like aunt. Instead of aunt, they call it aunt. Instead of can't, they call it can't. I chuckled to myself reading this the first time because I pronounced it exactly the opposite of how Dahl intended. But regardless, since the boy calls the woman his aunt, the anteater says, "A giant ant, by gosh, a winner! At last I'll get a decent dinner." And he devours the boy's aunt, saying he'll have the boy for dessert. Once again, I can't help but feel that this poem is a warning to the rich and powerful. If the powerful don't give their people what they're owed, the people will revolt. They will devour the powerful. The boy had an obligation to the anteater. He demanded to have it as a pet. Since he refused to meet the responsibilities that came with his power, the anteater took power into his own hands. In a later poem called The Cow, we see the pivotal animal sprout wings and take flight. Everyone is naturally quite amazed by this except for one detractor. The poem says, "Except for one quite horrid man who'd traveled from Afghanistan, this fellow standing in the crowd raised up his voice and yelled aloud, 'That silly cow, hey listen Daisy, I think you're absolutely crazy.' Unfortunately, Daisy heard, quite clearly, every single word. 'By gosh,' she cried, 'what awful cheek! Who is this silly foreign freak?' She dived, and using all her power, she got to 60 miles an hour. 'Bomb's gone,' she cried, 'take that,' she said, and dropped a cow pat on his head." Now, on the one hand, I think this poem teaches kids some important things about the real world. Some people will just refuse to see the beauty in things. It reminds me of this poem titled, "Letter to the Person Who Carved His Initials into the Oldest Living Longleaf Pine in North America." Some people are just haters or bullies for apparently no reason, and we shouldn't have to indulge them. But with those points in mind, where is the relevance in pointing out this man is from Afghanistan? Like, really, what's the point in othering him like that? It almost seems like the poem is suggesting this person is bad because he's from Afghanistan, that he doesn't take joy in things because of his foreign roots. Matters aren't helped when Daisy the cow calls him a foreign freak. One would think that Daisy, a winged cow, might be empathetic to people who look different from others. This mention of nationality really stands out compared to the others in the book. Pointing out the rich boy was from the US was relevant because most Americans say aunt rather than aunt. In the poem The Toad and the Snail, the French setting is relevant because frog legs and escargot are known as French dishes. Here in the cow poem, I reiterate, nationality is not relevant. To close out our discussion of this collection, we'll look at its last poem, The Tummy Beast. The poem recounts the tale of a boy who tells his mom that he has a creature living inside his tummy. The mother replies, "You horrid child," my mother cried. "Admit it right away, you've lied. You're simply trying to produce a silly, asinine excuse. You are the greedy, guzzling brat, and that is why you're always fat." Of course, the mother is then proven wrong when the creature bellows from inside the boy, causing her to faint. A generalized message we could take from this poem would be not to judge others since we don't know what they're going through. We don't know everything that's going on in their minds, bodies, and lives. But obviously you shouldn't judge people anyway. You don't have to have a reason not to judge people. A more specific meaning would be not to body shame others, but that's not a standard that Dahl held himself to. For example, in this poem from James and the Giant Peach, one protagonist mocks Aunt Sponge for being, quote, terrifically fat, and Aunt Spiker for being, quote, thin as a wire. That takes us into the next collection, Rhyme Stew, released in 1989, 6 years after Dirty Beasts. The collection opens with a poem called Dick Whittington and His Cat. This poem is another condemnation of the rich and powerful, this time in London specifically. The poem opens with this couplet. Dick Whittington had oft been told that London's streets were paved with gold. He gets a job with Lord and Lady Hellespont. The Lord is quickly portrayed as an impatient, trigger-happy animal abuser/murderer. The lady is portrayed as an adulterer. In fact, the lady's depiction reminds one of what Roald Dahl said about Red Riding Hood, not to trust women from the upper crust. Even the local church's vicar is depicted as a liar and a troublemaker, which won't be Dahl's only jab at religious figures in this book. After some chaos ensues and the Lord is stabbed dead, Dick's cat says, "And by the way, the man who told that London's streets were paved with gold was telling dreadful porky pies." That's Cockney rhyming slang for lies. The cat went on, "To me, it seems, these streets are paved with rotten dreams." Even though the story takes place in London, it's hard to hear those lines and not think of the American dream. To say that London's upper class is paved with rotten dreams suggests that people who dream of riches, or at least who acquire riches, don't have the most moral ambitions. As far as questionable content goes, there are a few poems in this book that verge on sexual innuendo. Take this one, The Price of Debauchery. My mother said there are no joys in ever kissing silly boys. Just one small kiss and one small squeeze can land you with some foul disease. But Mum, do you mean from just a kiss? You know quite well my meaning, miss. Last week when coming home from school, I clean forgot Mum's golden rule. I let Tom Young, that handsome louse, steal one small kiss behind my house. Oh, woe is me, I've paid the price. I should have listened to advice. My mum was right 100-fold. I've caught Tom's horrid runny cold. A reader might interpret this poem as a metaphor for STDs. In fact, if we take it further, we could say the poem represents poor sex ed. Look at the way the word kiss is italicized. It kind of seems like kiss implies more than what the speaker's mother says. But since the mother won't say what she's talking about specifically, the speaker ends up uneducated. Then there's this poem called A Hand in the Bird. I'm a maiden who is 40, and a maiden I shall stay. There are some who call me haughty, but I care not what they say. I was running the tombola at our church bazaar today, and doing it with gusto in my usual jolly way, when suddenly, I knew not why, there came a funny feeling of something crawling up my thigh. I nearly hit the ceiling. A mouse, I thought, how foul, how mean, how exquisitely tickly. Quite soon I know I'm going to scream, I've got to catch it quickly. I made a grab, I caught the mouse, now right inside my knickers. A mouse, my foot, it was a hand. Great Scott, it was the vicar's. So back to the future references aside, we again see a condemnation of a religious figure as the vicar violates the woman in this poem. It feels very much in the spirit of works like the Decameron and the Canterbury Tales in painting a critical picture of institutionalized religion and its figureheads. These next two poems, however, don't seem to feature any condemnation. The first one is called Physical Training. Our gym instructress, Miss McPhee, when gym was over, said to me, "Stay on, Bill Smith, I'll teach you things. I'll make you better on the rings, and after that, let's reinforce your work upon the vaulting horse." I stayed behind, she shut the door. She'd never been so kind before. She said, "You can get it right. I'll have to hold you very tight." She held me here, she held me there. By gum, she held me everywhere. She kindly taught me after that to wrestle with her on the mat. Oh gosh, the things she taught to me. Our gym instructress, Miss McPhee. I don't think the subtext is hard to pick up on here, but like I said, there is no condemnation. This teacher is taking advantage of a minor, and it all seems to be portrayed very positively. And make no mistake, this boy is a victim. He's clearly still in school. There's no telling what this sort of thing would do to a boy's adolescence and later his adulthood. This poem is similar. It's called Hot and Cold. A woman whom my mother knows came in and took off all her clothes. Said I, not being very old, "By golly gosh, you must be cold." "No, no," she cried. "Indeed I'm not. I'm feeling devilishly hot." Again, we see an older woman taking advantage of a younger man. This time, it's all the clearer how young the speaker really is. By their own admission, they're not very old, and they're clearly too naive to understand what's happening in the poem's context. Once again, there's no punishment for the violating party. At best, these poems portray these events as exciting for the young speakers. At worst, they're just meant to be taken as jokes. These poems kind of just feel like weird fantasy fulfillment on Dahl's part. As you might imagine, these poems were not included in Dahl's later compilation. As far as other questionable content goes, there are some very racist depictions of Chinese people in Dahl's version of Aladdin. The story is set in China, as some versions of Aladdin were, and follows a mixed-race man as a version of Jafar. The whole joke of this character is that his father was Scottish and his mother was Chinese. As such, he apparently doesn't look Chinese enough, and you can't see because this is a voiceover, but I'm doing air quotes around those words. It's honestly a little distressing to see this character made out to be so embarrassing. Then there are these lines as the Jafar-type character considers some people that he knows. He'd turn his landlord Kung Eggnog into an ugly jumping frog. He'd have the emperor, oh no go, incinerated nice and slow. And as for Mr. How You Pong, who always beat him at mahjong, he'd see that Mr. How You paid in every single game they played. These are the kinds of fake Eastern names that literal school children would come up with. We get it, languages differ from each other. Where's the joke in pointing out that Mandarin sounds odd to an English speaker? It's actually too bad because the latter half of the poem is kind of cute. Aladdin wishes to be a genie and he goes through time inspiring great artists. However, as you might imagine once again, this poem also didn't make it into Dahl's future compilations. This book also features 2 more fairy tale retellings, The Tortoise and the Hare and The Emperor's New Clothes. Both of these retellings also serve as condemnations of the rich. In The Tortoise and the Hare, the tortoise goes to the rat, a mechanic, to receive some upgrades. The rat then calls the hare and says he'll give him some information for a price. The hare pays up, and once the hare knows that the tortoise is cheating, he and the rat sabotage the race by putting thumbtacks on the trail. These pop the hidden wheels under the tortoise, but also keep the hare from competing. And in the end, the only one who walks away victorious is the rat, having received payment from both parties. As the poem's end says, "So just remember, if you can, don't tangle with a businessman. It doesn't matter who you choose. They always win, we always lose. If you were here and I was there, if you were tortoise, I was hare, we'd both get diddled in the end, by people like our ratty friend." This just reiterates multiple points from Dahl's other poems, chief among them that the rich do not care about the poor. They will play any side of an issue as long as it suits them financially. Corporations do not have morals, they just have bottom lines. They are not loyal to you, and you should not trust them. As for The Emperor's New Clothes, this one ends on a higher note. The nasty, haughty, foolish emperor is left frozen and naked on his skiing trip when tailors trick him into thinking he's wearing warm, lavish clothing. And just how do they trick him? Here's the scene where the tailor shows the emperor the alleged cloth. The king yelled, tearing at his hair, "Don't be an ass, there's nothing there." The tailor cried, "Hold on, I pray. There's something I forgot to say. This cloth's invisible to fools, and nincompoops and other ghouls. For brainless men who are round the twist, this cloth does simply not exist. But seeing how you're wise and bright, I'm sure it glistens in your sight." The king, not wanting to admit to being a proper royal twit, cried out, "Oh, isn't it divine? I want it all. It's mine, it's mine." I told you I'd mention Elon Musk again. Do you ever notice how the rich can often be very gullible? Have you also ever noticed that wealthy people seem desperate to prove that we live in a meritocracy, and as such they're always trying to prove how smart they are? Or how they're always seeking approval and validation? And yeah, maybe I'm just talking about Elon Musk, but even still, this poem serves as another pretty clear condemnation of the rich and powerful. And that's going to propel us into the last book we'll be looking at today, a compilation of Dahl's poems from his poetry collections to those written in his novels. In 2005, Jonathan Cape published Songs and Verse. And at the same time, in New York, Viking Juvenile published Vile Verses, which, despite the different title and cover, is the exact same as Songs and Verse. But if you're a fool like me and saw the differing descriptions for these books on RoaldDahlFans.com, you probably would have assumed they were 2 different books. Then you probably would have purchased both of them since you were making a video about Roald Dahl's poetry and you wanted to be thorough. So anyway, that's how I accidentally bought the same book twice. But regardless, this book features more condemnations of the wealthy and powerful. There's this one called The Nurse's Song from Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which will sort of explain itself as I read it. It's relatively short, so I'll read it in its entirety. "This mighty man of whom I sing, the greatest of them all, was once a teeny little thing, just 18 inches tall. I knew him as a tiny tot, I nursed him on my knee. I used to sit him on the pot, and wait for him to wee. I always washed between his toes and cut his little nails. I brushed his hair and wiped his nose, and weighed him on the scales. Through happy childhood days he strayed, as all nice children should. I smacked him when he disobeyed, and stopped when he was good. It soon began to dawn on me he wasn't very bright, because when he was 23, he couldn't read or write. What shall we do, his parents sobbed. The boy has got the vapors. He couldn't even get a job delivering the papers. Aha, I said, this little clot could be a politician. Nanny, he cried. Oh, Nanny, what a super proposition. Okay, I said, let's learn and note the art of politics. Let's teach you how to miss the boat, and how to drop some bricks, and how to win the people's vote, and lots of other tricks. Let's learn to make a speech a day upon the Teavee screen, in which you never say exactly what you mean. And most important, by the way, is not to let your teeth decay and keep your fingers clean. And now that I am 89, it's too late to repent. The fault was mine, the little swine became the president. The jabs at politicians here should be obvious. To say that a young man doesn't have the skill set to deliver papers but does have the required skills to be a politician really shines a light on who the country's most capable workers are. And not only that, but the fact that a boy who's illiterate can become the president speaks to the job's credentials and what average voters value in presidential candidates. This poem once again holds a magnifying glass on the idea of meritocracy. But there's a little more going on under the poem's hood. For one thing, it sounds like the nurse abused this focal character with relative frequency. Not only that, but whose job was it to make sure this young man could read and write? What was the nurse doing for the past 23 years? More importantly, what were his parents doing? We can read this poem sort of as a Frankenstein narrative. If this boy became a terrible president, who's to blame? The ones who pushed him into politics and left little to no room for any other opportunity. This isn't the only poem that delves into child mistreatment. The poem Goldie Pinklesweet from Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator sees the titular Goldie's aunt head to the bar when she's supposed to be watching Goldie. As such, the little girl gets into the medicine cabinet thinking the pills are candies. Her aunt finds Goldie after taking all her laxatives. The little girl's stomach gets pumped and she survives the whole ordeal. Unfortunately, she's left with lasting side effects. You see, if someone takes enough of any highly dangerous stuff, one will invariably find some traces of it left behind. It pains us greatly to relate that Goldie suffered from this fate. She'd taken such a massive fill of this unpleasant kind of pill. It got into her blood and bones, it messed up all her chromosomes, it made her constantly upset, and she could never really get the beastly stuff to go away. The lack of resolution leaves a sense of frustration in the reader. The structural choice lends itself well to the narrative. The story also feels like it lacks resolution, not just because there's an unhappy ending for Goldie, but because there's no unhappy ending for her aunt, the person truly responsible for all the turmoil. On top of the gross subject matter, the troubling ending makes it seem like this poem is only barely for kids. The stereotypical idea of kids' content, and poetry especially, is all hunky-dory with happily ever afters. But that's one of the reasons that Roald Dahl is so special, because he breaks that mold. Of course, that isn't to say his poems are always agreeable, and I don't even mean for reasons of offensive material. Take this poem from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, concerning Mike Teavee. The poem suggests that Mike is a brat and a terrible child because he spends all day watching TV. The poem ends with a very explicit moral. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. I understand the sentiment. I want to encourage others to read more too. But I think the execution is all wrong. The poem gives off major OK Boomer energy. Watching TV all day isn't good for anyone, but neither is reading all day. There has to be a balance. And to suggest that TV can't be a great art form and open worlds for people like reading can is so daft. I'm not the only one who had a problem with this poem. Another children's book author, Eleanor Cameron, wrote that she disliked Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for, quote, its hypocrisy which is epitomized in its moral, stuck like a marshmallow in a lump of fudge. That TV is horrible and hateful and time-wasting, and that children should read good books instead, when in fact the book itself is like nothing so much as one of the more specious television shows. I disagree that reading Dahl's books would be just as bad for one's development as a poor TV show, but I thought Cameron's burn was noteworthy to say the least. Roald Dahl was a misguided man in many ways. He was certainly a product of his time. And I don't say that to excuse his racism, sexism, or any other questionable ideology or material on his part. But censorship isn't the answer. As I said, censorship is a slippery slope. If we try to bury Dahl's words and stories that might deserve it, what might happen to his other works? And look, the question of whether we should even read controversial authors is a topic that deserves its own dedicated video. But Dahl's stories live on. His words likely inspired millions of readers. There is literary merit to his works. Look at the joy and imagination in some of these poems. This one is called The Giraffe and the Pelly and Me. We will polish your glass till it's shining like brass, and it sparkles like sun on the sea. We are quick and polite, we will come day or night, the giraffe and the Pelly and Me. We're a fabulous crew, we know just what to do, and we never stop work to drink tea. All your windows will glow when we give them a go, the giraffe and the Pelly and Me. We use water and soap, plus some kindness and hope, but we never use ladders, not we. Who needs ladders at all when you're 30 feet tall? Not Giraffe, and not Pelly, not me. Isn't that so cute and creative? Or look at this one that also inspires imagination and creativity. It's from James and the Giant Peach and feels very reminiscent of Dr. Seuss. It's called There's No Knowing What We Shall See. we may see a creature with 49 heads who lives in the desolate snow, and whenever he catches a cold, which he dreads, he has 49 noses to blow. We may see the venomous pink-spotted scrunch who can chew up a man with one bite. It likes to eat 5 of them roasted for lunch and 18 for its supper at night. We may see a dragon, and nobody knows that we won't see a unicorn there. We may see a terrible monster with toes growing out of the tufts of his hair. We may see the sweet little bitty bright hen, so playful, so kind and well-bred, and such beautiful eggs you just boil them and then they explode and they blow off your head. A gnu and a rhinoceros surely you'll see, and that enormous and adorable gnat, whose sting when it stings you goes in at the knee and comes out through the top of your hat. We may even get lost and be frozen by frost. We may die in an earthquake or tremor, or nastier still, we may even be tossed on the horns of a furious dilemma. I've only shared a selection of poems in this video, not even taking into account the insane amount of prose that Dahl wrote over his lifetime. And there were some poems I had to cut from this video for length, poems that I thought lent themselves very well to interpretation. But let's just leave it at this. Some of Roald Dahl's work is questionable, but erasing it isn't the thing to do. We can't deny the past that Dahl lived in. We must acknowledge that in order to understand the present we're living in now. As I said, on top of any literary merit, Roald Dahl's books make for decent teaching tools, vehicles to discuss controversial topics and how our views have evolved since Dahl's time. But what do you think? Did you read Roald Dahl's poetry and novels growing up? What did you think of his writing? What did you think of this video essay? Please tell me everything, and hey, if you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, liking, commenting, and subscribing goes a long way. If you want to go the extra mile, you can support me on Patreon for benefits like early access to videos and access to the community Discord. I can't thank my patrons enough. Also, if you do become a patron, you're eligible for priority review over on the second channel. Subscribe over there if you want for some writing tips. And if you want, follow me on Instagram to see what I'm reading, and Twitter for whatever else. If you were following me on Instagram, you would have seen me teasing this video already. But thank you for watching, and keep in mind, ultimately, this is a rough draft.